Well, he's nobody's fool, so he's playing it cool as can be. He'll give it away.
Hello again, everyone. This is Steve Kallas speaking of sports, along with WestchesterCountyPost.com contributor Carlos with a K Ortiz. And we're here to talk about the, I guess, bizarre final game of a bizarre season, 2020 World Series. Congratulations to the Los Angeles Dodgers. They win it in 6. But of course, as always, we've got a few things to talk about.
Yeah, so Steve, as we were talking off air, we were all robbed of a Game 7. There should have been a Game 7. The way that Game 6 had started, I got a huge problem with Kevin Cash. Let me give you some numbers for Blake Snell, Game 6 start, and how he was just dealing death. 5 1/3, 9 strikeouts, 2 hits allowed. The Dodgers lineup looked completely flustered, and what struck out to me was Mookie Betts, Justin Turner, and Corey Seager. Combined over 6 strikeouts. And it's not just the fact that it was 6 strikeouts, but these are 6 strikeouts where they looked completely deflated at the plate. Turner looked like he was flailing. Betts did not have an answer for Snell. Seager, he just looking at these Ks come in, and there's nothing he can do. They were completely flabbergasted. He allows a hit to Barnes, and Barnes gets on base after he gets a pop out for a first out. So again, 5 1/3. It's not like he was in trouble. So I don't know if Cash and the analytic heads upstairs just wanted to get him out before it was a pitch too late, which I prefer if he was the way that he was pitching. He only had 73 pitches. It's not like he was deep into the 90 pitch range. But on top of that, is there no confidence in your starting pitcher? Snell hasn't gone more than 6 innings since July of 2019. It was ridiculous to me, not just the fact that he made the change, but you went to Nick Anderson, and Nick Anderson has been terrible in October. His last 6 appearances, he's given up at least 1 run. What about Nick Anderson's track record in the World Series leads you to believe that that's the guy you want to take to replace Snell? Where Snell absolutely, his presence changed, his departure rather, changed the entire complexity of the game. What happens after that? Mookie Betts hits a double from off of Anderson. Then you get a wild pitch, Barnes scores, Betts goes to third, and then Seager hits a grounder, and Betts scores on a beat to throw home. All of a sudden, like that, it's 2-1 Dodgers advantage over the Rays. The game was over for me at that point. I literally shut off saying the Rays are not coming back. It's a soul-crushing loss. As a fan, it takes the air out of the stadium. It reminded me of Joe Madden in 2016 with the Cubs, where he almost managed the Cleveland Indians back into the game, being too cute, bringing in Lester and Chapman for extra innings where he should have went to the rest of his staff. I thought the game was decided right over there. I had a major problem with it. I know a lot of people had a problem with it, but Cash tried to, I suppose, defend his actions. And you brought up Pete Carroll off air in regards to the Marshawn Lynch versus Russell Wilson throwing play, and Malcolm Butler intercepted it. Same damn thing. It's an absolute joke. Let the kid deal. Enough with the analytics. Baseball's got to do something with the analytics. I get it. The numbers work, but the soul of the game is being crushed.
I 100% agree with the final thing and virtually everything you said. But to me, that's the problem. The analytics have taken over the game to such an extent that Cash after the game would say, well, they were going to come up for the 3rd time. And it's like he was watching the game, but he wasn't seeing what was happening, because you're right. This was the most dominant that Blake Snell had been all year. Cy Young Award winner, hurt 18, hurt last year, was a real good pitcher this year. And you're right about the limited innings he had thrown, totally because of his coach. Now, I'm not here to defend Kevin Cash in the least, but I will say this. In his other start in the World Series, he was kind of rolling along. They were winning 4-0, not as dominant as he was yesterday, but they were winning 4-0, and the following happened. Walk, Chris Taylor home run, Mookie Betts walk, Seager base hit. Now, because they were winning, I think 4-0 at the time, it was 4-2, and he pulled them right then and there. He never said this, but I think in the back of his mind, he was like, maybe when Snell loses it, he loses it badly. but that's totally a prior game. You got to look at this game. And you heard Snell after the game. He was like, I did everything I could. I wanted to pitch the game of my life. I wanted the chance to stay in there. Forget about going through the lineup the third time. I wanted to go through the lineup the fourth time. And that's where his mind was. And as you said, he so dominated them. And I'll add one more, Max Muncy, the 4-hitter. The first 4 guys were 0 for 8 with 7 strikeouts. And the 8th was a little dribbler that went 20 feet back to him. So 8 at-bats, 4 stars, 4 great hitters. I mean, their numbers other than Betts were video game numbers in the playoffs. And combined 8 at-bats, they hit the ball 20 feet. I bet you that's never happened like in the history of baseball. I don't think the Elias Sports Bureau could do that one, Carlos, but it was mind-boggling to me and frankly, everyone else. And literally once he came in, you went through, once Anderson came in, you went through what happened. 6 pitches later, the game was over. It was 2-1. Mookie Betts, because he's Mookie Betts, hits a home run to make it 3-1. And your Nick Anderson stuff, in the postseason, 14.1 innings, ERA 5.02, strikeouts to walks 9-4, home runs given up 3. In the regular season, not only this year, but last year, because this year was only 60 games, he's been great. 2019 and 2020, 37 innings pitched, 1.43 ERA, 67 strikeouts, 5 walks. What are you going to say? And now you're right. He had given up 6 in a row. I will say the first time was Aaron Judge hit a home run off him in Game 5 against the Yankees, but he did pitch 2 2/3 innings of relief. So, but that was the first of the streak. And when he comes into the game, the 6-game streak you mentioned is the longest in the history of the postseason, period. Now it's 7. So it wasn't only Blake Snell coming out, which was egregious. It was Nick Anderson coming in. After the game, Kevin Cash said,
The only motive was that the lineup the Dodgers feature is as potent as any team in the league. Personally, I felt Blake had done his job and then some. Mookie coming around for the 3rd time through. I value that. I totally respect and understand the questions that come with it. Blake gave us every opportunity to win. He was outstanding. They're not easy decisions. And that's where I came to the decision. I felt it was best after the guy got on base. Barnes hit the single. Didn't want Mookie or Seager seeing Blake a 3rd time. The thought was, what's the best way to secure a 1-0 lead at that point? And I felt it was going to Nick Anderson.
what, are you kidding me? The guy had given up runs 6 games in a row. You think this is the game he's not going to give up a run? And Mookie Betts clobbered that ball down the third baseline for the double. And frankly, Turner almost hit a home run later in the inning. And the one final thing I'll say about that thing, Mookie Betts in game 1, you'll remember this play. Mookie Betts in game 1 was on third. They brought the infield in, ground ball in the infield. He beat the throw home in game 1 of the World Series. You got to know every guy who's on third isn't the same guy. So for example, if you're playing short and you get a ball deep in the hole and you got the slow catcher running, you got time to throw. But if you got Mookie Betts running, you better get rid of it quickly and you're probably not going to get him anyway. So you already had game 1 where he beat a throw. And when you saw when Choi, the first baseman, was playing, there's playing in to cut off the run at home, and there's playing in to cut off the run when Mookie Betts is on third. And I thought that was the difference. And frankly, he beat that one rather easily. So I think there was so much wrong with what happened. And the analytics of the analytics of the analytics. I'm kind of an old-time guy, but I certainly believe in analytics. The final thing I'll say, which I saw on MLB Network, in 4 of the first 5 games, Kevin Cash let his pitcher go to the third time through the lineup. Glasnow in game 1, the big righty, the fireballer, he faced 5 guys the third time. He faced the top 5 guys, which again would be Mookie Betts and Sager and Turner and Muncy. In game 2, Snell himself, who did not remotely pitch as well as he pitched yesterday. And the thing I told you about where he gave up those 4 runners in a row, he pitched to Betts and Seager again. In game 3, Charlie Morton, he pitched to 4 guys. And in game 5, Glass now pitched to 5 guys through third time through the lineup. If of the 6 games, which we both saw, if you had to pick one game where you would let the guy go through the lineup the third time, it would have been this one. So I think it was the combination of third time around, what had happened to him earlier, and just I think these guys think like, what if Mookie Betts hits a homer? What are they going to say? How could you let him go through the lineup 3 times? Except the answer would have been because they were 0 for 6 with 6 strikeouts, as you said, 0 for 8 with 7 strikeouts and a dribbler, and he was strong and he only had 73 pitches. I think you're right. We got ripped off of a game 7. I don't know that they would have won 1-0, but they would have had a much better chance to win. And 6 pitches later, as you said, the game was essentially over.
Yeah, I'm going to let the guy that's dealing decide the outcome of the game for me. I mean, I'm not going to kill the decision if Snell was stayed in and gives up a solo shot to Betts or Muncy, whoever the case may be, and they lose it in 8-9 innings as opposed to at that point when Snell came out and Anderson came in. I wouldn't crush him for that. I get the criticism, but you know what? You have the best guy on the mound at the time. You ride it out because Anderson was on fumes. That whole bullpen was exhausted. And I think that was ultimately with the downfall for the Rays, regardless if it was Anderson or anybody else. But with that said, I thought it was an entertaining series. I thought game 4 gave us an amazing finish. Game 5 was a bit of a letdown because the momentum was just completely ripped off of the Rays and given to the Dodgers, considering how they bounced back. But I thought it was an entertaining series, went back and forth. I loved it. It was that small market, analytics heavy driven team in Tampa versus the Dodgers, who also believe in analytics, but they got the stars, they got the money to back up and fill in what analytics won't. I guess my concern going forward for the next season and seasons to come is, if the Rays would have won, would you have seen so many teams just shift to a completely, Moneyball style, type of play and how their organizations are run? I mean, we don't know because the Dodgers are champs, but with the ratings that came up for the World Series being the lowest it has been in a long time, you're seeing a lot of not just younger fans, but fans overall just kind of tune out of the game. I mentioned it earlier. It just seems like the soul of the game is leaving the field. The product isn't as entertaining because you're just watching relievers come in for matchups, guys batting from the left side, or, these defensive shifts. It's not the same as baseball was 10, 20 years ago. Baseball has to really decide what's going to be the product going forward because our kids are going to be watching this game, and is there going to be the interest? Football is now king. I remember when baseball was America's pastime. That's not the case anymore. Right. I just want to know what the sport is going to be doing going forward. Again, congrats to Los Angeles Dodgers. Yay. They certainly earned it. I won't give them an asterisk at all. Everybody had to play under the same circumstances. And not for none, they were the best team from start to finish.
No, I do agree with that. And I think you're right. The problem with baseball, and now that 9-inning games are not 2 hours and 20 minutes or 2 hours and 30 minutes, a Yankee Red Sox game is routinely 4 hours. I've said in the past, half joking, that if you want to change this game to make it like it used to be, just make it 7 innings. Now I've seen this year 7-inning doubleheader games, and I'm not so sure that's not a bad idea. The purist in me says, no way, the record book would be destroyed. But if you talk about getting younger people to watch the game, the other problem baseball had this year was the NHL, which I know is minor, but they started right in the playoffs. The NBA, as you know, only had 8 games left right into the playoffs. And then the 800-pound gorilla, as you say, the NFL, came in September. If baseball could have got their act together between players and the Players Association and the owners, and as usual, it was all about money. It wasn't even about COVID. It was all about money. If they could have started 3 or 4 weeks earlier, they would have had a monopoly, at least at the beginning. They never had that monopoly. Even I, who love baseball, that first round of the playoffs to me was like half like a joke. It was like the first 2 days of the NCAA March Madness. And now Manfred, we'll talk about this another time because I want to stay with the World Series, but now Manfred said he wants to increase playoff teams, not like it was this year, but still increase, which I'm against. And he also wants to consider putting in that second base and the 10th inning guy, which I'm totally against. That changes the game. We'll do another one on that if and when that happens. But the thing I wanted to talk about was Game 5, Clayton Kershaw, who I've always been on the fence on as a postseason pitcher. They're making him out to be great now. I will say, give him credit. He pitched well in 2 games of the World Series. He got 2 wins. He pitched 11 and 2/3 innings in 2 games combined, which is now good. But in one game, they were up 2-0 in the 4th and I think 6-1 in the 5th. In the other game, the Dodgers scored 1 in the 1st, 2 in the 2nd. So he got the run support he needed, but he did pitch well. But I will also point out, now that he's 13-12 and over the hump in terms of 500, because he's been terrible, not bad. He's been terrible in the postseason. He did pitch 8 shutout innings and got a postseason win against the Milwaukee Brewers, who were a pretty poor hitting team this year, even though we thought they might be better. They hit 220 with 75 home runs. And I think their OPS was like 3rd lowest in the National League. But he gets credit for a postseason win against a 29-31 team. Shoot me now. Imagine if the Astros made the World Series at 29-31. The cheating Astros, that would be a whole other thing. But I give credit to Kershaw, but he's such a nice guy and such a great, I've said Kershaw in the regular season is Koufax. And when I say that, people are like, oh, no. Go look at his records. He's Koufax. So, or Koufax-like. He's not better than Koufax. And of course, Koufax with the hitless wonders had an under 1 ERA and was like 4-3. But I want to come back to this. Game 5, you know the play. Margot's on third. He tries to steal home. They're losing 3-2. Kevin Cash made sure after the game to say, oh, yeah, I didn't tell him to go, but he's free to go. Okay, Kevin. It's Steve Fisher when the Fab Five, when Chris Webber called time. And after the game, he goes, we told him we had no timeouts left. Not me, baby. Not me. Not my fault. But whatever. But interesting thing. Now, Kershaw has that big, you know him in the stretch. I don't think anybody does what Kershaw does in the stretch, where he puts his hands all the way up. Interesting time to try and steal. In the old days, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, even into the 70s, with a man on third, pitchers took a full windup. That's why you saw steals of home, real steals of home. I don't mean the back end of first and third. It's a steal of home, but not to me. You're not stealing home. It's Jackie Robinson in the 55 World Series stealing home. So he's got a lead. He's fast. He left at the right time when Kershaw has his hands all the way up in the stretch, because if he breaks his hands, as you know, it's a balk. He didn't even see him going. If you watch the replay from afar, Muncy at first yelled to him. I think it was Muncy playing first then. Whoever was on first yelled to him, he's going. And Kershaw was smart enough, and he's a very smart player, to step off the mound, which you have to do. Now, if you're in your windup, a full windup, you got to throw the pitch. You don't have to step off the mound. It's a pitch. But you step off, and oh, by the way, he made a bad throw to home. He threw it up and away. It would have been up and away to a righty batter. And of course, you want it down and in right by the plate, like you're trying to throw a guy out at second who's stealing. So I think the only mistake Margot made, and I watched the replay 10 times, if he could have gotten a little longer lead, a foot more, a foot and a half more, I think he's safe. He got the bad throw. He left at the top of Kershaw. So if Kershaw comes down to set, he's safe. If Kershaw doesn't step off the mound, it's a balk. But Kershaw, being a smart guy, steps off the mound, makes a bad throw, but he's out anyway, and he was out. I read an article where they said, oh, they should have challenged it because it was close. It was close, but he was out. So I found that play fascinating, and the problem, of course, is I'd rather see it when you're up 3-2 than when you're down 3-2. But he did take a shot. I really think if he could have got a longer lead, you know, with shifts now also, you can get a longer lead. And I just watched the replay. I don't even know who was up, but it was a lefty. So they're over. But I watched the replay, and I just thought he could have gotten a little more of a leader. If he was just a little faster, and he's fast, he would have been safe. And that too might have changed the game and the series, much as what you just talked about with Blake Snell could have changed the game and the series. Any thoughts on the steal of home or whatever your next topic is?
I don't like stealing in that situation because you kill the rally, you take a man off of base, you end the inning. But yeah, sometimes when you take a chance, you get burned. And I'm not absolutely gonna kill it, but I didn't like it.
Okay, what do you got next?
Only thing to say is, kudos to baseball. There was a point in the season where I didn't think that they were going to be able to get in a full season, let alone postseason World Series. I thought baseball, for the most part, handled it all right. Not as good as basketball and as hockey with the protocols. You know, there were a lot of times that it didn't seem that safety was in the forefront of the players. It was more just how can we fit these games in and make this a legitimate season.
Right.
But you know what? This is extenuating circumstances, and I kind of mentioned it earlier. There's no asterisks on this season for me. I think the Dodgers are well deserving.
I agree with the no asterisk. I did think they did a good job with COVID. They didn't have one postseason positive until the final game, which was a little weird. We'll save that for another time. Actually, next week, I'm going to do a COVID NFL thing with our boss, Janelle Albritton, who knows all this stuff. And I think we'll have to mention what happened in baseball at the end. But again, we'll save that, for another day. But I do want to mention just the fact that Randy Arozarena hit 10 home runs. That's the all-time mark. That's incredible. This guy came out of nowhere. He actually didn't even play on the Rays till August 30th. Think about that. But he was, I think he set the all-time record for hits in the postseason. I don't know if it's skewed by those 2 extra games at the beginning. I didn't really go back and look at the numbers, but this guy, everybody knew what he was, even by the championship series, and he was great there. He played really well in the World Series. But I did want to focus on Corey Seager, and I just want to read you his stats because he's kind of been the unsung guy. Not only was the World Series MVP, he was the NLCS MVP as well. I will mention before I go to Seager, I thought the Dodgers had an advantage because they played 3 weeks in that ballpark, and the American League team came down from San Diego. I thought that was a bit of a disadvantage. I never heard anybody really talk about it except to say, oh, you guys have been down in the same place for 3 weeks. That to me is an advantage. If I've already played 12 or 15 games before you show up, I have some kind of advantage. If nothing else, I know the locker room, I know the field, I know the bullpen, but I think there are probably other things. I wish somebody would have asked some of those guys that, but they're winning the World Series. They're so happy. But Corey Seager, I mean, these are video game numbers. This is all in the World Series. He hit 400 with a 538 OBP. His slugging was 700. So combined, his OPS is 1.238. I mean, that's like a video game. So he scored the series best 7 runs. He drove in 5. He had 4 doubles and 2 homers. He's an excellent fielder, as you know. And he was on base 14 times in the 6 games to lead everybody on both teams just in getting on base. So I think he's a deserving guy. Again, to me, they could have lost. I know they were the heavy favorites. I picked the Rays because I don't pick the favorites. I don't care who the favorites are. But I thought it was a very exciting World Series. The things that I'd like to end on, and if you have something else, of course, I'll throw it to you. So we can say all we want about how stupid it was to take Snell out. But I want to read a couple of quotes from none other than the Los Angeles Dodgers. Mookie Betts, quote.
It was kind of like a sigh of relief. Had he stayed in that game, he may have pitched a complete game. And I don't know exactly what would have happened, but he was rolling. I mean, he was pitching really, really well. That's the Cy Young Snell that came tonight. So once he came out of the game, it just like I said, it was just a breath of fresh air.
All true. I mean, imagine. He made him look silly, both at bats. And then he hit a rocket double, and then he hit a home run. Maybe nobody was celebrating more than Mookie Betts when they took him out of the game. Literally, when Mookie Betts was coming up to the plate. Dave Roberts, quote.
Pretty happy because he was dominating us, and we just weren't seeing him. So, once Austin got that hit, then they went to the pen. I think that Mookie looked at me with a little smile. And we were just all kind of excited that Snell was out of the game.
World Series Game 6, we're excited. The other manager took the pitcher out of the game. I didn't write this down, but Bellinger said, we're actually joking in the dugout. Boy, we did a good job getting Snell out of the game. Again, if you hear it from the players, Carlos, it almost doesn't matter what anybody else says. They were like doing cartwheels or giving high fives in the dugout. I'll say what I said about Pete Carroll. I'd love to see the same exact situation. This will never happen, of course. Same time, same game, same situation. Do you really think he's going to do the same thing? Because I don't. I think Pete Carroll's handing the ball off. Marshawn Lynch.
What's the definition of an insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Very good. So I agree with you. Congrats to the Dodgers. I agree. No asterisk. Everybody was in the same, they had to do the same thing. The playoffs, as my son pointed out to me, was actually a tougher grind this year because even if those first round games, for the most part, not totally, Houston Astros, for the most part was a joke. It still was an extra 3-game series you had to win. And if you lost, I think the Indians were higher than the Yankees and they crushed Bieber in the first game and they beat the Indians. But, the 8-1 series, I don't think so. The Dodgers and the Rays were the best team in their respective leagues. The best teams played in the World Series. A couple of things could have changed games, literally loss to win, win to loss, but it didn't happen like that. So yes, congratulations to the Dodgers. Any final thoughts?
Yay, Dodgers. Woohoo.
This is Steve Kallas, speaking of sports, along with Carlos with the K, Ortiz. We'll see you the next time.